All right, we're here.
Marcel's found a new toy.
So I've been sort of playing with the idea of, okay, so what's an easy way to do some some recording with like a couple of different people, especially since you and I talked about doing a video version of the podcast as well. In other words, doing a video component. And so I started looking at all sorts of I mean, there are tons of things out there. There really are. Some of them are audio only, some are video, and then of course there's our ever popular open broadcasting software, which has which requires a whole bunch of other little plugins and funky things to do. So I looked at this thing which is called Wave.Video, and I'll let you know what I think about it after I've had a chance to play with it for a while. But it does have some interesting things, including voiceovers, like if you do something, I don't know, what's the ever popular, like we say something really, really smart, and then see, that's just not right. Or here's the other thing as well. Shut up, shut up, shut up. Oh, man, those people. Or we could just jump right into the podcast like we would normally, right? Because I mean, we have this thing where we talk beforehand, but then at some point we shut up and we say, all right, let's do the introduction.
I haven't been saying much yet.
It's alive! Can't win that game.
Tick, tack, toe.
Oh, come on, get into it.
Well, I'm okay. Yeah, it's still early in the morning for me. By the way, that seemed to have a little bit of an echo on it.
Does it?
Do me a favor, cut this and replay it right now and see if you didn't find a little bit of an echo on this, or you just want to keep going and we can edit this out.
I do not hear an echo at all.
No, on the music.
Oh, on the music. Oh, interesting. All right, you know what? Let's just leave it. And then that way, it's a really good test of how this whole thing went off. And I'll be really sad, of course, if nothing works. But
you realize the last time that we did a video version of this, I was an one-armed avatar.
I do. Actually, I remember that. Yeah, because you were using an Oculus Go, and I was using a Quest, well, the original Quest, in fact, which actually still allowed me to, so I had two arms, and I could do handshakes and stuff like that, and you couldn't.
And then I upgraded to the Quest, and now they're both obsolete.
I still use my Quest 2, so it's not quite obsolete. I still use my Quest 2, although I have to say that we got a PSVR 2 for our PlayStation 5. And it's an expensive headset. It's a little over the top. And but I have to tell you, the visuals are mind-boggling. Like, it is incredible, and it has eye tracking, so that you can follow things on the screen, or you can highlight things and make things happen just by looking at them. And again, like I said, the visuals are phenomenal. It has a greater field of view than the Quest or the Quest 2 or anything like that. So a huge field of view, 4K resolution. It's just gorgeous. I mean, when you're inside this thing, when you get the headset on and you're playing a game, like I'm playing a game called Horizon, and I just started playing it like a couple of days ago, and I have to tell you, it's like being there. It's kind of amazing.
Well, what is your take on the whole like non-Facebook, non-Meta ecosystem in VR? Because it seemed at one point like Facebook was on a quest to just dominate everything. And so much as the Sony stuff is expensive, at least it's nice to see another player.
Well, it is. There's been other players before this. I mean, HTC has been around for a long time. What the Quest did is, well, okay, don't laugh. But what the Quest did, and it had going for it, was the possibility of doing something that was really inexpensive compared, and a lot less complicated than what you had to do with, with the HTC Vive system. Like the HTC had to set up basically a room with sensors in the corners and crap like that. I mean, that's fine, I suppose, but if you just want to sit down and play a game for a few minutes, really, you just want to slap on the headset, grab the controllers, and go. And the downside of the Sony thing, and I sort of understand, is that it's still cabled, but it's cabled to your PS5,
Right.
Right?
Whereas
So,
there's a version of the Meta one that attached to a PC, right?
oh, you're talking about like the old Oculus? Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
pre-Meta. Yeah, exactly. So it's the same sort of idea. You're attached to the device on which you're playing your game, and the PS5. I know you're not a console gamer, but I have to tell you, the PS5 is just it's like a whole new world for playing video games. It is absolutely freaking gorgeous. Everything that you do on it, that are designed for the PS5, is just absolutely beautiful. And putting on that headset and going into that 4K surround world with the immense field of view, and it's just I don't know. It's something special. It's really great.
I get that, but it almost seems like we've gone a step backwards. Here was Facebook / Oculus
Hmm.
take something and make it affordable to the masses.
Hmm.
And it's starting to get a little cheaper or whatever. And now things are bumping up again. And I'm wondering, about this world, about how accessible it's going to be to people.
Well, first of all, you have to remember. Yeah, first of all, you have to remember that the Oculus, uh, the Oculus is a different marketplace than somebody who's gaming on a PS5. Like, I mean, you're not gaming on a PS5 because there aren't games that you can play on your tablet, for instance. You can hold up your tablet and play games, or that you can play games on a Quest 2 or something like that. All those things still exist, but there is a different level of gaming. There's a different level of visual quality and so forth, and that's what you're paying for on there. Because in a way, the PSVR 2 is far more limited than the Quest, like hugely limited. First of all, it has less titles at the moment than the Quest does, and you can't just, as I put it, slap it on and play it like you can. I mean, it's if you're downstairs. Well, mine's in the basement anyway. But if you're downstairs and your PS5 is turned on and you're ready to play a game, it's just a matter of putting on the headset. But the Quest lets you put it on wherever the heck you want. You're not tied down to a specific system in any way, shape, or form, and you're not limited to things that come out of Meta. Okay, you can actually connect to a site with a browser inside of the Oculus headset, and I'm going to continue calling it the Oculus for the moment. But you can you can connect to those things. You can play games that are browser based that are still VR games, okay, inside the Quest. But you can't do that on the PSVR 2. The PSVR 2 is there to provide a gaming experience that is on par with the PS5. So
Okay.
it's not an availability thing there, as far as I'm concerned. It's not even a metaverse controlling the metaverse thing, which, by the way, is ridiculous. I mean, the metaverse isn't a Facebook Horizon or Meta Horizon. The metaverse is every conceivable way that people can connect virtually on the internet, and that started long before VR headsets existed.
Of course. But what do you think? I mean, what does it tell you that the biggest player coming in now is still a gaming console? Like, our VR headsets, what is it going to take for them to get out of the gaming niche and into something more mainstream?
I have a few answers for that. One of them is that gaming is a market unto itself. Like it really is. I mean, gamers aren't interested in, like a serious gamer isn't interested in, hey, can I use this device to connect to my office so that we can have a virtual boardroom meeting? No, they don't give a crap about that. I mean, that's not what it's for. Um, However, there are headsets that are being developed that are more augmented reality as opposed to virtual reality. In other words, they take into consideration what's in your actual space. And in fact, the Quest has tools now that let you map out your desk and your keyboard. so that you can see all of those things from inside a VR experience. So you can be inside a virtual reality boardroom, but there's your desk sitting in front of you. The chair, it recognizes your couch or the chairs that you're on, and so so that those are effectively brought into the virtual environment. And again, you've got your keyboard sitting in front of you, so you can actually type comfortably.
Well, I remember when I set it up for the first time, right? It shows you the room that you're in, and it lets you set boundaries so that you don't walk into walls and things like that. And to do that, I guess it needs some basic cameras on the outside of the headset so it can do
That's
that.
right. Yeah. The Quest that they're working on at the moment has color cameras, as I understand it, like for the Quest 3, has color cameras so that you don't have this blurry black and white, external view, and it becomes more of an augmented reality device. I read something yesterday. Now, this is all speculation, of course, until something actually does come out. But I read something yesterday that says that it's like 1/3 the thickness of the Quest 2. Okay, so all of a sudden you've got a much lighter device that doesn't stick out in front of your face like this, right? Like it's not 2 inches out in front of your face or 5 centimeters, depending on who our audience is here. But it's just like this, relatively, a couple of centimeters or an inch in front of you as opposed to 2.5 inches. And it's a lot more comfortable and a lot easier to work with at that point. Now, other companies are developing augmented reality headsets, which are designed to take into consideration your real space. So pretend for a second that you are going to use this to chat with friends, like the way that we use Zoom today, okay, or the way that you and I are doing this right now.
Right.
You're going to chat with friends, and you're going to map out. They're going to have a couple of rooms, and they talk about this like digital twins. Okay, so you'll have a digital twin of your friend's living room, like the people that you meet with on a regular basis. So 2 of the chairs will be the chairs that are sitting across from you, for instance. Digital twin is a lot more complex than this, but I'm dumbing it down on purpose here. So there are 2 chairs there that are your visitors' chairs. There are 2 chairs here that are in their world, the chairs that you come and visit in. You put on your glasses, which are thin augmented reality glasses. They're not like, fully immersive virtual reality sorts of things, which will continue to be useful for gaming. Okay. But now you put this thing on and you can see your room and you can see your partner, the person who's sitting beside you. And you can also see the people who are coming over to visit you sitting across from you as though they were actually there.
I love to listen to you talk about this. You are so immersed in this. It is fun to listen to.
It's a cool world. And I think sometimes I accept that there are dangers in every technological revolution, but I can see a glorious, really cool, exciting Star Trek-like future waiting for us. And I'm ready to jump in, man.
It is, but it still is a very unsettled world. I mean, one of the first virtual sort of chat areas, AltSpace VR, is going away.
Yeah.
Microsoft bought it, and then and now they're closing it down. Like,
Yep.
What's up with that?
I don't know. They didn't think it was profitable, and they didn't see any reason to continue going with it, so they're shutting it down. I'm not privy to what's going on inside Microsoft, and frankly, I didn't call anybody up to ask them what was happening in there. But shit like that happens, and let's face it. I mean, most new things that come into the marketplace eventually vanish anyway. Okay, or it's replaced with different versions, different products that are, let's call it more or less the same thing. But okay, let me take you back to something here. I mean, I'm here in Waterloo. I know you're there in Toronto, but here in Waterloo, we invented the smartphone. Okay, the smartphone was invented here in Waterloo by a company called Research in Motion, the BlackBerry. Okay, the BlackBerry came into the world, and it was the dominant smartphone device. Everybody, I mean, people were attached to it. It was on their hips. I had a BlackBerry. Did you have a BlackBerry?
No.
Okay, I had a BlackBerry. In fact, I had several BlackBerries. I've had like 3 different BlackBerries that I remember over time. But now I have a Google Pixel phone. That's what I have these days. And it's gone, but it doesn't change the fact that that technology had to exist, had to come from somewhere before we get to the iPhone and before we get to Pixels and Samsung phones and so forth. So the fact that a company invests in a product and decides that they're no longer going to be part of that development or part of that technology doesn't mean the technology is worthless or that it's gone. It just means that that one particular company decided to get out of the marketplace, period.
I know. It's just, I still fondly remember my Google Cardboard. I mean, there's all sorts of,
You're so cute.
What? Oh, come on. I loved it. I loved it.
Anyway, sorry.
You love this new toy, don't you?
Sorry.
Anyway, at least I'm not getting booed. No, don't you dare.
You want to boo me?
Don't you dare.
Excuse me. Anyway, yes, yeah, Google Cardboard was cool, but it was like an early stepping stone to where we are now, And if you think about it, before Cardboard, there was the ViewMaster. I don't know about you, but I still have a ViewMaster. I've got a couple of them sitting downstairs, and I probably have, I don't know, 30 or 40 packs of reels, that show me different parts of the world. And it's quaint and, interesting. But the fact is, we went through the ViewMaster phase before we went through Cardboard, before we went through what was the Samsung product, their updated version of I can't remember what it is now. Doesn't matter. And then the Oculus Go, and then HTC Vive, and all these other products.
But it doesn't. I'm just saying, before we move on, it doesn't bother you that so many of these big giants are sort of getting in, and it's sort of like getting their feet wet, getting them, and immediately running away.
Well, they're not immediately running away. I mean, AltSpace VR has been around for a few years now, so it's not like a running away instantly.
Well, was it always a Microsoft thing?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. But Microsoft has invested in it for the last 5 years. So, I mean, they spent 5 years in, supporting and developing this product. And a lot of what they put into that product will be picked up by other people to create, newer, more interesting products. And, I'm sad to see it go because I kind of like AltSpace. But it's not the end of everything. Just like, the BlackBerry going away, wasn't the end. I've got a phone that is far superior to anything that was available at the time. And they're no longer in the business of making those phones.
Don't get me started on BlackBerry. I've got some very strong opinions. Had these guys gone with Android as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely. It was okay. It was a complete failure of foresight. Okay. And I can think of lots of companies like that. Blockbuster Video. Think about this for a second. They controlled the world of video rentals. Along comes this bloody little upstart, Netflix. Blockbuster could have said, let's pay for an infrastructure, develop an infrastructure where we can stream content to people's homes. Like, they could have done it even when Netflix started. They were still.
You don't remember the story? Blockbuster was offered Netflix at a bargain price.
Yeah.
It's one thing when a company has events overtake them. It's another thing when they make spectacularly bad decisions.
Yeah, like not deciding to publish the Beatles and letting somebody else take over. It's like.
No, but I mean decisions that ultimately end up killing the company. Like,
well, true. Yeah.
BlackBerry not going Android, Blockbuster not buying Netflix when it had the chance, and so on and so forth. But
well, for the record, BlackBerry is actually doing surprisingly well, but they're in a different business.
Well, arguably, it's the business it could have been in the first place.
Yeah.
They were known for being like the most secure phones.
Yep.
And BlackBerries could have been the most secure Android phone you could buy, and that would have been a niche that would have done extremely well for them. They could have done a lockdown version of Android that nobody else had the expertise that they had to pull off. I mean, the problem is not just bashing BlackBerry, but it's the what could have been.
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
but they got sold off and they got pared down or whatever. They had two innovations that to this day, being able to do a keyboard on a phone, a full keyboard on a phone, and having basically a lock on security. They could have parlayed those into things that would have kept that company front and center these days in the phone world, but woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm with you.
And so it's good to see you. Yes, I'm changing the subject. It's good to see you.
Well,
We've known these for a while.
Wait, you're changing the subject?
How much more are we going to beat this one into the ground? Oh, okay. Back to the toy.
Hey, listen, if I was editing this down, okay, in the classic sense, I would be inserting all these things in there. I can just punch a button.
Okay, we have our transition music in real time. Wow.
We have our transition music in real time, and we had the startup music in real time as well. Aren't you excited? I'm excited. Okay, so what do you want to talk about?
You're the one playing with the toy.
You're
the one that gets to queue up all this stuff. I'm just a participant.
There's that. But look on the bright side. The bright side is if this works out. If it doesn't, then this is a disastrous failure, and we will have spent our hour recording the podcast, and it will just suck immensely, or just fly off into whatever windstorm exists out there to carry it away. I'm being so poetic here. But if it works, then you will have the benefit and the joy of me turning something around in less than 2 weeks.
Quite all right. It's been more than 2 weeks since we last did this. Well,
oh my God. Do you want to know how long it's been? I'll tell you. I looked this morning at how long it's been. And this is how long it's been. ChatGPT hadn't been released yet. And that was back in November.
What is this ChatGPT thing you speak of? Is it like a new piece of software? Is it like is it a gaming console? It's
kind of like Wordle, only better. Okay, in that, unlike Wordle, which only uncovers like one word a day or something like that. And by the way, I've never played Wordle, so I'm assuming that there's something about uncovering a word, because people say I got the word in X number of steps. So I think it's like the old Mastermind game, with the colored pegs, except you do it with letters. I think that's what
I remember Mastermind.
Yeah, Mastermind was a great game. I love that, but I think that's Wordle is. So have you played Wordle? Do you know what it is?
I know what it is. I've never played it. There were some other online games I played with friends about trying to guessing the word and that kind of thing. It comes and goes.
So neither of us ever actually played Wordle.
The fad is already gone at this point. I'm sure there's diehards, but
yeah, the joke I was going to make, though, is it's like Wordle, except that it will generate an infinite number of words in any style that you want. It will create essays, write code, create limericks, make jokes, write email letters for you. It's, obviously, I know what ChatGPT is, but it is, I don't know, in my opinion, it and its brethren, so to speak, is the greatest technological change that we've seen in the last 100 years. It is like we're only barely starting to understand how it's going to change the world that we live in. I've used it. If I am any indication, and of course, there was a news story where Google is starting to run scared. They called Code Red on the idea that all of a sudden everybody was talking to ChatGPT to get their answers. But if I'm any indication, I'm a Google guy through and through. I don't work at Google, but I have a Google phone. I have Google Assistants in the house. I have smart cameras on my doorbell, and Google cameras, for a security system. Like, I'm all in on Google. I've got Google TV remotes. I'm all in. But okay, Go ahead.
But to me, that's an unfortunate characteristic of our current system of tech. Whereas if you're in the Google world, you're not talking to the Apple world, which is not talking to the Microsoft world, etc. They're all trying to make these freaking closed ecosystems, right?
Well, except in the Google sense, that's not entirely true, because in the Google, I mean, I've bought into their products because I happen to like the products, but I've got like smart lights all over the house that have nothing to do with Google, but they all work fine on Google.
Well, the example that I have an Amazon Fire tablet that is a sort of that is a sort of Android minus.
It's like an abacus, only a little bit more advanced.
Well, but they started with Android and they clipped it down because they figured, well, this is just going to be a reading device and nothing more. And so there's tools that I've installed to make it more of a normal Android device, but it still never quite gets there. But it's just, I'm a little worried about these ecosystems trying to wall off from each other. If you're Android but you don't play ball, you don't get to install the Play Store, and then you're limited from these things. So you're Android, you're the open source component of it, but you're missing a whole lot of other stuff. So you have Android, you have Amazon that recreated an app store.
I'm going to be the optimist in the room here. Okay?
You always are.
I always am, but I'm going to be the optimist in the room here, because all of these things to me are growing pains. Okay, I mean, you and I go back like to the practically the early days of the open source movement. I mean, we've been around a long time here. The kids out there, they just don't know what it was like in the early days. Anyway,
I still have a mag tape that I bought off of the GNU project.
Okay, I still have a disk from a 250 megabyte multi-stack from an old Honeywell system, the first disk pack I ever crashed. Okay, and it was a thing back then. It was here, the disk is dead anyway. Here, you can have one of those, and it's a picture frame, and it's got a little picture puzzle that I did years ago in the middle of it, hanging on my wall in the basement. I still have that. That's how far back I go. Okay, so the point that I'm making there is that open source was like this weird sort of oddity thing, as was Linux and so forth. And now it's the most common, most used operating system in the world. And it's like, it's everywhere. It's in your Android devices, Chromebooks, smart thermostats, smart TVs, you name it. Like, it's absolutely everywhere. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, while you're worried about all these closed systems and all these products that don't talk to each other and so forth, time inexorably marches on forward. I remember when you used to have to install special plugins to be able to play QuickTime video, to be able to play this type of music, to be able to play that in your browser. I remember when browsers were very specific. Now, granted, there are things that some browsers are supported for and not others. But the bottom line is, every web page that you're going to visit today, from a newspaper to YouTube to whatever, will work on every browser. And the reason it works on every browser is eventually that stuff all comes together. Originally, email had different formats. Okay.
Well, I'm certain can remember that there were certain websites that would only ever work under Internet Explorer because they were built with some proprietary, undocumented whatever's.
Active something or other. I forget.
Yeah. Active whatever.
Something or other. Exactly. And Flash. Flash was one of those things. It's like, well, you need to have Flash installed to be able to do this thing. It's like, well, that's pretty much gone now. And
I've always disliked Adobe ever since.
Well,
they were trying to make their own walled garden.
But the thing is, the walled gardens eventually almost always fail. They just do. Okay. So the way I look at it, these are all technologies that are being worked on. And remember what I said about, pretty much every business, like most businesses fail, most ideas fail, most technologies fail. I want to take that back. Okay. To me, it's not that most of them fail. It's that most of them are abandoned by whoever it was that was developing them initially. Because people will start things that aren't meant to last an eternity or aren't meant to last years. They're meant to pay for dinner next week. Okay. And I mean, think about, no. Think about this for a minute. Think about freelancers, for instance. you get a job that, you know, is good for 3 months or something like that, you know that that's not a career that's going on for the next 20 years. It's, you know, 3 months, right? And you've gotten something out of it. They've gotten something out of it, and then you move on. And I think with a lot of things that are being developed, with a lot of products that come on the market and then disappear, it's like, so what? Like, we don't live in a world of permanence when it comes to these things. And you know what? No one ever did. Like, you know.
Well, okay. But the thing is, if you're an end user of computer technology, and a big company comes out with this thing and they say it's going to last forever until it doesn't, right? You and I both had these, both were subscribers briefly to something called Stadia.
Yep.
This wonderful ecosystem that was going to give you games by wireless gaming and all these neat things or whatever, until one day, nah, we're done. We'll give you your money back. We'll free up the we'll finally free up the handsets to use Bluetooth and not our proprietary tech. But I'm just looking at it right now. There's an entire website called killedbygoogle.com.
Yes, I'm aware of that. Yes, yes, and it's amusing, and I like it too, and I think it's fun. But
I guess, you know, if this is the price we're paying, you know, if people have in Silicon Valley have this sort of run fast and break things kind of mentality, which is great unless you are an end user that needs something to attach to and you don't like jumping around that much.
And that is one of the reasons why I think it's more important to have open standards and open formats than necessarily an open piece of hardware. Although, you know, I'm not a huge fan of the idea that you can't fix the thing that you bought, paid for, and own, you know, that somehow is still not yours. I mean, that's a whole different thing. But
yeah,
and let's not even go there right now. I mean, because that would be an entire show on its own. But the fact is, technologies get developed and they get abandoned, and other people pick it up. Now, Stadia, or Stadia, depending on how you want to pronounce it, I understand it's Stadia, but I used to call it Stadia all the time, isn't entirely dead, in the sense that while they were floundering around, other companies were developing their own cloud gaming systems, partly in response to the fact that Google was out there pushing its own product. They did a better job of it. Google admitted, yeah, you guys are doing a better job of it, and they turned it over basically to those other people. And I don't feel that that's necessarily a bad thing. I was kind of sad to see the fact that Stadia was not making it and it was going away, because obviously I had invested in it as well. Okay, but the technology isn't gone. You know, the technology is just in different hands and offered up in different ways. There's the NVIDIA product, which I'm trying to think of what it's called at the moment.
Shield?
What's that?
Shield. Not the Shield.
Not the Shield. No, they have their own cloud gaming service. NVIDIA has its own. NVIDIA Now is what it's called. NVIDIA. Sorry, not NVIDIA Now. GeForce Now. GeForce Now is what it's called, and it allows. It's a cloud gaming platform, and in fact, it's in some ways a lot more interesting, because it will bring in your titles from Epic Games and the things that you bought on Steam and the things that you bought on, you know, a handful of different marketplaces, and make them all available in one central place that you can play using their cloud gaming platform.
Well, the one thing that we're demonstrating here, and this seems to be a recurring theme, is that the first mover doesn't always succeed, and in fact usually doesn't. That, you know, the pioneer, the leader in this, rarely is the one that survives afterwards. So you have a company that goes in, does the proof of concept, goes in with lots of fanfare, and inevitably somebody else comes in with a similar technology that eats their lunch. And part of the reason I'm saying this is because I want to bring this back to ChatGPT.
Okay. Oh yeah. We were talking about ChatGPT. That's right. My God, I totally forgot. Holy cow.
Boy, that was so long ago in this conversation. But bringing this back to ChatGPT, I almost get the feeling that although ChatGPT right now is the toy of the hour. There's a part of me that thinks that its function has been essentially to bring this kind of AI into the public consciousness. But I don't know if a year or two from now, ChatGPT is going to be the leader in this, or whether or not there's going to be a bunch of new upstarts that are going to come and eat their lunch. And so, is ChatGPT going to be a repeat of Altspace VR, where Microsoft throws an awful lot of money at something and then after a while just says, sorry, we couldn't do it. See ya.
Well, I understand what you're saying there, but first of all, the mission of OpenAI initially was to be the cheerleader, for developing this type of responsible artificial intelligence technology, and they are technically a nonprofit,
Where did
although
responsible come into it?
where's responsible, that was kind of part of the original idea. Was we want to make sure that this technology, you got to remember, I wrote an article like 4 years ago or something like that on GPT-2, where they unveiled this technology that was just too dangerous to make available to the public because of how it could basically move continents and topple mountains and things like this. And then of course now we're at GPT 3.5, and Microsoft Bing is reportedly using GPT-4. So the technology marches on forward, regardless of how scary somebody thought that it was, at one point. And OpenAI was originally built with the idea that, yes, we're going to develop this kind of powerful artificial general intelligence, or AGI, but we want to develop it in a responsible way, with oversight and with partners and with people who test things out in a responsible way, so that terrible things don't happen as a result of the development of this technology. And whether they succeed in that or not is something that future historians will have to look back on. But that was kind of the original mandate of OpenAI when it was created by Sam Altman and Elon Musk. You want to say something?
It almost seems though that it's sort of, I mean, I'm getting this feeling that they open the doors, but I don't have a lot of confidence that ChatGPT is going to be the one that outlasts everybody else.
But that's not the mandate of OpenAI, though. The mandate is to bring the technology into the world, not necessarily to be the one who controls it or the one who defines what it is going forward.
And the Microsoft investment isn't going to dilute that mission?
No, actually, Microsoft's investment doesn't change the status of OpenAI. Again, I mean, many things can be happening under the surface here, and we can speculate all we want. And at some point, one or more of these things is going to be proven wrong. But that's not what they're in it for. What they're in it for is, we want to be part of the development, and we want to be able to have access to the technology. Like, we'll throw money at you for the privilege of being able to experiment with the technology and have early access to the APIs and so forth. And I said early access because, as you may know, if you've been following the news on this, I follow the news on this in a rather obsessive and perhaps unhealthy way. But the API, the public API for access to ChatGPT from OpenAI, was just unveiled yesterday. So any and every company that is willing to pay for API access can now get it. So you are going to see a deluge, of biblical proportions of products coming onto the market in the next couple of months that are built on GPT technology. And it's going to be disruptive as hell, but it's also going to be really, really cool and interesting what people do with this technology. It's coming. I mean, and they've opened it up for everybody to do that.
They've opened it up, but I'm curious to know your take on something that you sent me this morning, which was a news story about Elon Musk, who's now trying to rally some companies to do an alternative to ChatGPT because he says ChatGPT now is too woke. Now, I'll give you an example of something like this I came across. when ChatGPT first came out, I got an account, probably not as fast as you, but I was there eventually. And I started to do, I said, do a biography of so-and-so and write it in iambic pentameter.
Yes.
Right? And it did it. Do it as a haiku. Dutifully did it. Do it in the style of Donald Trump. And it did it. And it said, so-and-so is the best of its kind, and it's bigly, and I highly recommend it, and there's nobody better. And it went into the stylistic, the stylistic ways, and it was wonderful. And I came in 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks later, and I tried doing the same thing for a different set of a different bio. I was trying to demonstrate to somebody else. Look what it's able to do. Iambic pentameter, fine. In the style of Chaucer, fine. As a haiku, fine. In the style of Donald Trump, sorry, I can't do that. I'm not able to give a political slant to what I'm doing.
Right.
So that tells me somebody's been mucking with the innards and not allowing you to get a pure output of this thing.
Yes.
And so as much as I really don't like a lot about what Elon Musk is doing for anything that's not rocket related, I mean, SpaceX is fantastic, but the Vegas Hyperloop, blah. Tesla is now going to become an also-ran now that the Fords and others are catching up.
Well, that was inevitable. That one was inevitable.
And Twitter, don't get me started. So I mean, okay, in anything not related to space, Elon Musk has a reverse Midas touch, in that everything he's coming across is turning to crap. And now, however, I find myself in the position of maybe he's got a point. Whoever's working on ChatGPT, at least to the public interface that exists now, they're tinkering with it in a way that deals with politics. And that bothers me. It's not allowed to give its pure output. Somebody is mucking with it internally.
And they're doing that because they're bowing to government and and other social pressures, which is basically, I mean, one of the things that people argue about, and this is one of my this is one of the things that I can talk about for hours because it drives me bananas. But people argue about the idea that, first of all, we need to be able to know exactly how it is that it came up with that. Well, you're never going to know. It is a black box, whether you like it or not. Well, in that case, then we have to make sure that somehow it doesn't marginalize or offend people or do things like that. And these are governments. They're the United Nations, or sorry, the EU rather, is trying to push that, this responsible AI technology stuff. Our governments are trying to do that. You've got a lot of people who are saying, this technology is great, but it also shows the worst that there is of humanity, and we have to make sure that that's not the case. We can't have it be offensive. We can't have it be insulting. We can't have it be racist. We can't have it be any of those things. The problem.
Okay, well, you're saying then the woke complaint is partially valid.
No. I'm not going there. I'm trying to say how we got here first. Okay, and that is how we got here. Now, so they say, well, we need to be able to put guardrails on this thing. And they use that term all the time, guardrails, to make sure that the ball doesn't go off into the gutter. We always have to hit the pins. We always have to hit the pins. It can't ever go into the gutter. And to me, that's like, we need to be babied and protected and, in a childish sort of way. And to me, that's a real downside to what's happening with the technology. Partly because, first of all, I'm a writer, and not aside from writing tech stuff, I've also written a lot of fiction. I've also written a lot of opinion pieces and so forth. And if all of a sudden I have to worry about any question that I put to one of these things being couched in, it's not proper to ask questions about these sorts of things, it's not proper to consider the possibility that any of these things could possibly even be true because it might offend someone or be used in bad ways or something. Well, all that shit is already on the internet, all of it. Like the best and the worst of humanity is out there on the internet. What was ChatGPT trained on? The internet.
Wasn't
Okay.
there once a bot that somebody put on Twitter, very, very well-meaning, and like within 48 hours it became
Hey,
the
yeah,
people
it
that were
took less than
talking
that.
to it were training it
Yeah,
to spew crap?
yeah. It was either Facebook or Microsoft, but her name was Tay, Tay, Tay Chat. And Tay started out as this 13-year-old girl who was very, who was talking about, hi, I'm out there to chat with people and so forth. And what they did was, to be fair, okay, they said, we will let Tay learn from the conversations on the internet. Oh, bad idea. You remember when some group was trying to name their new boat, their new ferry that was being put out on the water. And they said, we're going to take names from the internet and we're going to pick the one that gets the most votes. Are you fucking kidding me? So what's the number? What's the one that won? Come on, go
Wasn't
ahead.
it Bodie McBoatface or something
Yeah,
like that?
Bodie McBoatface. Like Bodie McBoatface. Like you couldn't see that coming. Okay. And if you're going to open it up to the worst of humanity, which basically does hang out on Twitter, let's be perfectly honest, and did long before Elon Musk took over. Okay. And if Tay is going to learn from those people, then Tay, yeah, is going to be a racist asshole within 24 hours. It was inevitable. Okay.
So is something similar to that going to, okay, so now in response to that, we now have guardrails on the new GPTs, so they can't go in that direction. But that's, to me, that's limiting the potential of this stuff. In
Of
that
course.
before it's even out of the box,
Of
it's
course.
like it's got one virtual arm tied behind its back.
Now, the right way to do, and this is one of the things that perpetually, I mean, you've known me long enough to know that every time especially the EU, every time they come out with a new set of laws to control technology or the dissemination of web-based information and so forth, I groan for hours. It drives me nuts because they've got a bunch of politicians and a bunch of social activists who are trying to make laws on technology they do not understand. Okay, like they don't understand it. It's like saying, I want to know every single step that this software took to come up with that answer. Well, you can't. Like you can't track it. It's like this cloud of associations,
Now,
happening millions of times in a second, and you expect to be able to track it back.
but having said that, though, the difference between the 2 weeks where it would give me do this in the style of Donald
Yes.
Trump and no, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Somebody had access to that black box and was able to tweak something. So
No, yeah.
there is something knowable and changeable. It may not be the entirety of the black box, but it's a piece of it that somebody was able to go in and muck with.
Okay, the piece that they were able to go in and muck with, my friend, is you. Okay? It's your input because the black box is still capable of generating all of that shit.
Oh,
But
so in other words, it didn't even go into the black box.
exactly.
So it was basically a filter on the UI saying, we're not going to let you even ask.
They're filtering you, not the output of the technology. ChatGPT is still more than capable of putting out all that stuff. And in fact, there are GPT-based products out there that will still do that. And I'll give you a perfect example. I'm part of a writers group that looks at assistive technology for like GPT type technology, artificial intelligence technology. And there's a product out there called Sudowrite, SUDO Write. Yes, they're Linux geeks who created this thing. Just in case you're curious, Sudowrite. Anyway, Sudowrite uses the GPT engine. In fact, it uses the DaVinci 003 code that ChatGPT is using, but it will generate any kind of stuff that you want because it considers the possibility that you're a fiction writer, and fiction writers will ask for sex, violence, horror, whatever, okay, racist output. It doesn't matter because you're writing fiction, you're writing books. So obviously it's going to throw out stuff like that to help you. It's like, okay, describe for me a house of horrors, including the machines that would torture somebody, and give it to me in graphic detail. And it will describe all this for you without even blinking. And it's the same back end.
So
Okay.
what would happen if Winnie the Pooh was actually a monstrous killing machine?
Yes, it will do all that. It will answer all
No,
those.
there's a movie out there already like that. Now that Winnie the Pooh is in the public domain, that exists.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's so cute. That's so sweet. Oh, I love it. Anyway, so the guardrails. So the thing that, to me, the thing that is most fascinating about this is that what we're doing is we're tweaking the humans. Okay, and what should happen, Evan, is that, you know how you can go into Google and there's a safe search switch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's the way it should be with ChatGPT and all of these things. It's like, okay, well, we release it with a moderate level of filtering up front. Okay, knowing full well that the back end is capable of delivering whatever it is you want. But up front, we have a level of filtering, and there's a little switch. Like if I go on Reddit, like I'm a huge fan of Reddit. I Reddit a lot more than I ever Twittered, and I still love Reddit. But Reddit has a allow NSFW posts.
Right.
Okay, it's right there, and in fact, they also have on NSFW posts, like hide the image. Okay, so not only does it allow NSFW, or does it have a switch for that, but it also has a switch for, so that you can't even see the images that are associated with it. Well, I turn all that shit off, okay? Like, I'm not afraid to see NSFW content in whatever format it happens to be. And I personally feel that it's up to me to decide whether or not that stuff is accessible to me, or whether it's going to offend me or hurt me or scare me or whatever. Okay, but make it possible for people to actually throw that switch. And that's what ChatGPT should be like. We have a moderate level of filtering up front, and like, how there's a ChatGPT Plus product, right? $20 a month. $20 a month gets you access to GPT Plus. Faster, it doesn't have those timeouts, it's always available to you, blah 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 blah, all that stuff. Well, on that $20 there should be a switch that says allow NSFW content.
But it doesn't even have to be ChatGPT. Now that, as you say, this AI is opened up, and now that there's competitors coming out to ChatGPT that are using the same, sooner or later somebody's going to come up with something that says, I've got this switch and you can turn it off, and everyone's going to say you can generate kiddie porn with it or whatever. Oh, well, that's the first place everyone goes. What about the children? What about the virtual children?
That's right. Think of the children. I always love that one. That's like, if you want to derail a conversation or an argument, think of the children.
Anytime somebody wants to control adults, they mention the children. You can see it coming a mile away.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm not sure where we're going with this, except
okay. Well, where we're going with this is I'm just gonna, like I said, there's gonna be tons and tons of products, but I'm gonna throw a couple of things over at you that I want you to consider. Okay. If ChatGPT,
we'll come back and talk about them next week or next time after I've had a chance to digest them.
That's right.
And after you've watched Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey is the name of the movie. It's real. We'll put in the link to it here. We'll put a link to the trailer in it.
Blood and Honey, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Okay, I'm gonna have nightmares about this, aren't I? I still have my classic Winnie the Pooh stuffed bear, which I've had for like 3 decades now or something. Well, not quite 3 decades. Yeah, 3 decades. My wife bought it for me, like, because I always had this thing about how I love the original Winnie the Pooh, but the Disney version drove me nuts. So I have this original Pooh. Anyway, I digress. So here are a couple of things I want you to think about. One of them is there is yet another alternative search engine, which you should absolutely, definitely check out as soon as we're done here. It's called you.com, YOU.com.
Oh, I'm there. I have an account.
All right. Have you used the chat function there?
A little bit, but not much.
Use it. Use it compared to the output of ChatGPT. Okay. And then we can talk about that later on. I love you.com. I'm using it on a regular basis. It is a privacy respecting search engine with all sorts of fascinating and interesting plugins. It has its own chat interface. And of course, it also has access to the internet in a way that ChatGPT doesn't, because it'll give you references and, you know, where it found the information. It's wonderful. I love it.
No, I have an account. I've been using it. They send me a lot of emails about, please use me more. But that, oh no, I'm impressed by what I see. I would definitely that right now, I think that would be my chat of choice.
Yeah, well, use the chat function a bit more, experiment with it, and we can talk about it next time we get together. But like, give it a really good try, and in fact, if you want, you know, when we're offline, I can give you some ideas on how you can manipulate the chat in such a way that you can get, you know, more complex answers if that's what you're looking for. It's
Well,
really quite.
I'm already going to be asking you for help with things like stable diffusion and doing pictures of large-breasted elves. And
That's your fault. You're the one who asked me for those things.
really?
You said you used the words warrior porn, so I generated images.
You went with that. You went with that. Very well, mind you.
Oh my God. Anyway, we digress here, I guess. Oh my God. Oh.
We've got so much there's so much to talk about. We're almost into an hour, and
I know. Okay, so one other thing that I want to throw it at you, just to wrap up this whole Chat GPT thing, and then I'm going to ask you a quick question, because I know we're coming up against the wall where you got to go and do other stuff. But you know, I used to be a top 40 disc jockey at a radio station way back when in the day. Okay, like, you know, back when I was like 19 years old, I was a radio station disc jockey.
Well, you still have that wonderful radio voice.
Thank you, thank you. You're listening to All Hit Radio, and right now I get some great tunes with me. Anyway, there is
tunes. Anytime I hear the word tunes, sorry.
Anyway, no. So there's this product that I got wind of a few days ago, and I'll put a link in here as well so that people can give it a try, called Radio GPT. And
because,
you know,
of course.
What's that? Sorry.
Because of course.
Because of course. But here's the thing. I, of all people, okay, should go, cool. But in some ways, this one actually hits me. And it's funny because while I worked, I mean, I did it as a job. I got paid for it the whole bit. I was a top 40 DJ. That's not the path that I went down for my career. You know, I went into technology. I became a writer, you know, that sort of thing. Like, I never went down that road. But now there's this product that will play the music for you, create playlists, read localized news based on your geographical area, pull up interesting things out of Twitter, tell you fascinating things about the artists and the music that it's playing. And it has AI generated disc jockeys. And you can have one or two, they can banter back and forth. It's kind of fascinating and terrifying at the same time. You can have this whole social hierarchy, you know, of producing and sharing news and music and weather and interesting things, entirely 100% done by artificial intelligence without a single human being anywhere. Somebody presumably pays for access to the technology to generate their own radio station, but nobody works there. And that, to me, I did not see that one coming.
Oh, there's the number of jobs that this has the potential to replace. I mean, UBI,
we need UBI. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm thinking of paralegals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking a lot of accountancy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking a lot of these sort of white collar, middle placed jobs. Yep. Somebody's saying that it's going to replace journalism. There's some chunks that it will, lots that it won't. AI will be a fantastic copy editor, but it's not going to have any instinct of what the public wants to know as news. And it will be interesting down the road to see because somebody will do an AI version of a media outlet, and to see how that compares against the ones that have human gatekeepers.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting. But the place where I am most fascinated, where I'm watching this the most closely, is in academia. Because as far as I'm concerned, most of the higher education system in the Western world needs an enema, and this might be just what's ready to give it.
I'm not going to get that picture out of my head.
Okay, so they're saying, oh, we're now getting into an arms race between AI that will write academic works and AI that will determine whether or not AI wrote it. And they're going to get into an arms race. It's going to be useless. It's going to benefit nobody. And academia itself is not going to be moved forward. What it is going to do, I think, is eventually it's going to require universities to totally rethink of how their students learn and how they get evaluated. I think the idea of the academic paper as we know it is probably going to go away. Because I remember even during my time, I worked at a university in the humanities or social sciences, one of those. And they would have a student conference, a grad student conference, and they'd have a couple of days where every student would get up and they'd read their piece out loud, and no one would ever read or listen to it ever again.
Of course, yeah.
And they would be duplicate pieces, and they would be shouted into the ether because they really didn't contribute much to human wisdom, because they were basically maybe a new shred of logic put on the same old facts.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm rambling a bit on this, but I think this system in which people demonstrate wisdom, I think, needs a massive overhaul. I think ChatGPT has laid bare how badly, I don't know if corrupt is the right word, but certainly there's something definitely wrong with the way students are learning and repeating back what they're told, getting graded on it, and then they go out and write other papers that nobody reads.
Well, especially in a world now where you have no guarantee that any of this is going to serve you in any useful way from the perspective of making a living going forward. Shall we move on? We're at the point where I know you got to go, but just before you do, sorry. Why don't you just spend like 2 minutes and tell us about your new project, The Muddy Middle, before we run away?
Well, we both have new projects, right?
We do?
Yes, because you've now got a new set of tools for your website.
Oh, yeah, right? yeah. Sorry, I forgot about that.
Yeah, you did, didn't you?
I did.
So here we are both doing a podcast, and we're going in slightly different directions. Yours is going back into text, and mine is going into video.
That's
so
me going in a different direction.
Since you open this, you go first in talking about your new venture.
Oh, fine. Okay. I've had a website for years. In fact, I've had numerous websites, which I suppose is maybe would very well be part of the problem. And although my main website continues to exist, marcelgagne.com, it's a mess. Like I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things and weird modules that I've added over time and links that don't work anymore and broken things here and there. And I thought it would be nice to do a fresh start somewhere. And of course, I've sort of let my original website sort of linger. So it's kind of like, not only a mess, but an untended garden, if you will. So I decided that I would look at some of the things that people are doing to run a blog or to communicate with the world. So I looked at Medium and I looked at Substack, which are kind of the two big popular blogging platforms. But the thing that bugs me about both of them is, first of all, you still have to, like, they make it sound like, oh, we're going to give you like a we're going to give you like listeners and viewers, or not listeners, but readers and eyeballs and stuff like that. But the fact is, you still have to do the work yourself. That's really what it comes down to. Unless, of course, you're one of the star talent that we picked out, and are paying money to come and work there. Or to produce stuff there. But I digress. But the other problem that it's got going against it, from my perspective, is they all look the same. If you're a Substack writer, you look like every other damn Substack writer in the world. It's boring as hell. Ditto Medium. It's boring as hell. So I looked at a platform that actually does this in more like a Substack way than a Medium way. And that's a product called Ghost from a website called ghost.org. And they sort of got my, a little bit of my love right off the bat, because they're an open source content management system that provide hosted services with a mailing list, not to mention a backend, so that if you want subscribers to, if you want to make it possible for subscribers to support you financially with a membership in the way that both Medium and Substack do. Well, more Substack than Medium, because Medium expects you to pay an annual fee just for the benefit of being there. They will do that. They will provide, but they'll also provide the tools so that you can host your own, and you can do the whole thing yourself if you're willing to do the work. So in that respect, it's true to the open source philosophy, and I've elected to go with that. So I've taken one of my domains, freethinkeratlarge.com, freethinkeratlarge.com, and for anybody who knows me, that one's not difficult to find. And that's my new Ghost-powered blogging site. And so I invite you to come to it, and please subscribe. That way, when I post something, you'll actually get an email that lets you read it.
And another nice thing about Ghost is that when people do subscribe, how much of a piece of it does Ghost actually take?
Zero, which is kind of cool.
Which is unlike Medium and Substack.
Yeah, Medium obviously wants you to pay up front, and Substack wants 10% of everything that you make, which doesn't sound like a lot if you make $100 a year, but if you make $100,000 a year, it starts to feel like a fair bit. 10% at that point starts to feel like a hell of a lot of money. And if you were a person who makes $1 million a year, they get $100,000 a year for the benefit of giving you this plain Jane, boring looking website that is entirely under the control. And here's the other cool thing about Ghost. If you pay for the hosted platform, which is like $10 a month or something like that, and you let them do all the work of hosting it and providing the plugins and whatever, if you want to host your own and you don't want to pay them anymore, from which they don't take a cut of your memberships, you can actually download everything and just reload it back onto your own platform, wherever it happens to be, like a Linode or something like that, and it'll just continue to work. So I love it. Yeah. I'm kind of excited by what they're doing there. So Ghost.org is the CMS, and freethinkeratlarge.com is my new blogging site. Your turn.
I am too, and I'm delighted to see it. I'm looking forward to you moving a lot of your content there and having. I think it's a great thing to do. Okay, over to my piece. So I have just uploaded my first video. It's only a trailer, but it's a start to a new web.
Sorry.
Just had to do that. Anyway, so as of right now, it has no real videos. It has just the trailer, and it is for a YouTube channel called The Muddy Middle. And so I did a little bit of my homework. So I also have muddymiddle.com, which right now is going to a blank WordPress file. But also, and setting up the social media or whatever, but that comes later. The first thing is actually getting some content out there. And so, given some of the stuff we've talked about with, with putting bumpers on the lanes and I'm taking this under the premise that there's a lot of media criticism sites out there that are talking about, this, the Washington Post sucks, or CNN sucks, or Fox sucks, or whatever. I'm taking that as a given and asking the question, okay, what next? So the current mainstream media and most of the even independent media basically all have agendas. In many cases, they're owned by very, very large corporations whose shareholders are saying, I want to have as many people watching as possible, and if that means scaring the crap out of them and getting people to hate each other, go ahead and do it. And so I want to try and discuss how to make an antidote for that. We're not going to fix the media. It's kind of broken, and I'm not sure the media is capable of fixing itself. But then the question is, okay, we're there. So what do you do next? And so the goal of this channel is to try and make the news media fit for human consumption. Taking the premise that it is what it is, okay, what do you do with it? And also trying to address the fact that most people don't want to kill each other. Most people don't want to think of half the country as being their mortal enemy. And yet, a lot of the media is trying to drive people in that direction for fun and profit.
Yep.
And so what I'm trying to do in this, and I have no idea if I'll succeed, but at least I got to take a whack at it, is to say, okay, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that and keep your sanity and not hate your neighbor? And so this is going to be partially dealing with the media, partially dealing with issues where, viscerally hating everything that X person says is not going to get you anywhere, because occasionally they're going to be right. And so just viscerally reacting to people or dismissing people because of who their friends are or whatever. There's a number of different topics to go into. And so that's the direction I'm heading.
All right. Well, I look forward to seeing how you tackle this. I all of a sudden you're starting to sound like the optimist here. So,
Oh, and absolutely. This thing has to be optimistic. I have to go with the premise that most people are not evil. And that even the way that conservatives think of libtards, and that the way that progressive thinks of rednecks or whatever, and everyone's got these pejorative terms as if nobody on the other side has anything good to say about anything, and how it's become so polarized, the society can't sustain itself with half of the country hating the other half of the country.
I agree with you completely.
And so, yes, this is going to be a very optimistic channel in saying that we're good people by and large. There are going to be fringes. By and large, most of the population are good people that don't want to hate each other, and yet they're getting manipulated for fun and profit.
Well, I wish you the best with the project. I hope it's successful in every way imaginable. And maybe
you may even be a piece of it. I may even get you on a couple episodes.
It's dangerous to get me on anything whatsoever. You know that, right?
Well,
including this podcast, because I could do things like that. Shall we wrap it up?
Yeah. You won't have control of that on my video, but
all right. So in that case, then let me just well, that's fair. That's totally fair. So because I usually we usually don't have a video component, and I usually throw this on the end. I will just say to anybody who's still out there watching and listening, that if you like what Evan and I are doing, please, the best way that you can support it is by letting other people know that it exists. Point them to where the video lives on YouTube, which will probably be under my channel for the time being, possibly the foreseeable future. But also, please, tell other people about it wherever it is you pick up your podcast, whether it's Anchor.fm or Spotify or Apple Music, or is that what it's called these days? Apple Music, whatever it's called. Anyway, wherever it is you pick up your podcast, tell people about it. Talk about this show on your podcast.
And have a look at our new projects.
That's right. That too. That too. Wait, hang on. Oh, wait, that didn't work. Oh, man.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's the time. That's the time to wrap it up, music.
Live long and prosper, my friend. Peace and long life.
You too.
Bye-bye.
See you in the internets.
You bet.